Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. This is the Chicago Teachers Union morning presser. We are going to be presenting several speakers. We'll start off with Vice President Jackson Potter. And at the end of our speakers, we will return for a question and answer. You'll be able to add questions in the chat and the comments section. We'll be able to take a few questions before we wrap up at the end. So at that point, we'll prompt you to put questions in the comments, and you can do so along the way. Again, we just wanted to give a few more people a chance to join. But I think with that, we will get ready to start. So again, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm going to pass it to CTU Vice President Jackson Potter.
Thanks, Abby. Good morning, everyone. Today in Washington, we are very concerned that Linda McMahon has her hearing to be appointed as the next secretary to dismantle the Department of Education for the Trump administration. We know Trump's already signed executive orders that are likely illegal and unenforceable, but say teachers cannot teach the truth to students about history. He signed orders that anyone who supports students with counseling, emotional assistance, or resources to navigate their gender or sexuality could face prosecution. Trump told McMahon he expects her to put herself out of a job by removing and dismantling many of the civil rights protections and anti-poverty supports we've depended on from the federal level. We know Trump is laying the groundwork for what will likely require the largest educator-parent coalition this country has ever seen for uniting those who care about Black children, children with disabilities, children in poverty, the very fabric of public education, undocumented children. And we know that those children, also houseless children, disproportionately attend Chicago public schools. And in Chicago and Illinois, we need to have a plan. The federal government, if it comes for academic freedom or to remove sanctuary schools, what will the Chicago public schools and state of Illinois do? Will we sue to protect our policies like Denver did yesterday? If the federal government comes for CPS federal funding, do we have a secondary revenue plan? Has Pritzker discussed this with CEO Martinez, Mayor Brandon Johnson, and provide the kind of support other states are already doing in anticipation of these cuts? We know the DOE has provided essential oversights to CPS over time. It's helped reduce the racially disparate discipline policies that disproportionately harm Black students, led to the district removing zero tolerance policies and police from schools while requiring more restorative practices and counseling supports. The DOE also intervened to stop the illegal and vicious cuts imposed by Rahm's school CEO, Forrest Claypool, back in 2015 and 16 to special education. We know that the DOE has also provided trauma supports to students in CPS after Laquan McDonald was murdered. We know that pipeline money to diversify the teacher ranks is also part of the DOE's mission. And we worry that these protections and civil rights oversights will disappear when Trump dismantles this body. And with the new administration putting in a person who knows more about WrestleMania than the nature of schooling, Illinois needs a contingency plan. The governor's budget address is only a week away, and there hasn't been, to my knowledge, a single solitary email from the district to parents and allies about the need to rally for revenue in a state that ranks in the bottom quartile of funding and is $2.6 billion behind its own formula. We don't need virtue signaling. We need protections for our most vulnerable students. Has the CEO accepted a single revenue idea of the 25 we've presented in bargaining so we can lobby together to support our students? We are going to be doing that with a state coalition on February 26th. and we invite all of Illinois to join us. If the federal government removes civil rights protections that this district requires to address discrimination against Black and brown children, how will CPS and ISB uphold and champion civil rights? We're already seeing ripple effects. Illinois farmers cut off from grants. Head Start is in jeopardy. Elon Musk is stealing our data. And once we get through the McMahon hearings, there's only going to be more disruption to public education and harm therein. We must mobilize to protect our students. We know what it looks like. A few weeks ago, we saw at Hamline Elementary, we practiced solidarity together to protect our students and the sanctuary space that our schools provide. And sanctuary is not just about immigration. It's for Black history, Black teachers, protecting academic freedom, ending racist discipline policies. It's for our students in special education, for our LGBTQIA students. You already know our union is willing to fight and collaborate on each of these issues. We're beyond frustrated. We don't have a contract to provide that force field in this critical moment. And that's why we feel the need to encourage everyone, all stakeholders in our school communities, to speak truth to power, teach the truth, feed hearts and minds of our students and school communities, and prepare for the coming storm through solidarity and action. For this and more, we are joined by a number of incredible educators. And I want to introduce, I'm not sure yet if Quentin Washington is here. He is an elementary educator on the Southeast side, an executive board member, and I would like to bring him up to say a little more if he's available. Oh, Tanisha, I'm sorry. I will change that to Tanisha Rawls. Tanisha is a Chicago Public Schools special education teacher on leave and is also the union's liaison to our special education committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackson. Good morning. My name is Tanisha Rawls. I am, as Jackson said, a CPS teacher with over 15 years of experience and more than half of those years in special education. With this new Trump administration, I'm worried for my students and their well-being. I'm afraid that this administration will eliminate funding for crucial programs and services that our students with disabilities rely on. Programs and services such as Special Olympics or pre-employment transitional services that are both beneficial to students like Janaya or Jason who have intellectual disabilities and struggle with social inclusion. These programs assist them with building confidence and breaking down barriers so that they can access life as their non-disabled peers. So what do we need from the federal government? We need the federal government to continue to support legislation like IDEA that guarantees children with disabilities a free and appropriate public education, and it allows parents and teachers to have a voice in their child's education. We need the district to agree to a collective bargaining agreement that allows our students the opportunity to a high quality school day and well-prepared educators that tailor learning around students' individual needs. If the Department of Education is eliminated, who will our students with disabilities and their parents go to when the district fails to provide their needs? What happens when a district has a CEO like Pedro Martinez? Who will be the backstop? Who will hold others accountable for our students' civil rights? We need a Department of Education and a district that supports our students with disabilities. Thank you, Jackson.
Thank you, Tanisha. Next, I would like to bring up Dr. Corey Lascano, CTU member, high school teacher, and chair of our union's LGBTQIA committee. Corey, welcome.
Good morning, and thank you so much, Jackson, for having me here today. My name is Dr. Corey Lascano. I am a high school music teacher. I'm a GSA advisor, and I'm a co-chair for the CTU LGBTQ+ committee. Chicago is home to a vast diversity of LGBTQ+ identified students and staff in every single community. In fact, a survey done in the past few years demonstrates that on average, there's at least one transgender student per every class of 30. Despite this, Donald Trump's administration has already begun to wage war on LGBTQ plus people through a number of violent executive orders. He's signaled that he is targeting transgender and gender nonconforming educators. He's also targeting any school staff that supports our trans students, labeling them as sexual predators for talking about LGBTQ plus topics. He's working to prevent youth from having access to any gender affirming care, including just using the pronouns and affirm names that make students feel safe and loved. They're working to prevent trans girls from playing sports. Linda McMahon has no educational background, and she is part of this cog in a machine that wants to eradicate LGBTQ plus people from everyday life. They're using our schools as the battleground. Gender affirming care has been demonstrated in countless research studies and medical journals as the primary treatment for gender dysphoria, and has proven to significantly reduce thoughts of and attempts at suicide. In fact, a Trevor Project survey done in 2021 found that there was a 50% decrease in the likelihood of attempting suicide when students had their names and pronouns respected by their school communities. By removing this important care, the risk of suicide increases drastically. I have a student. I've actually been honored to have many students who have shared with me their trans journey throughout CPS. One in particular I've had for all 4 years, and he is now a senior this year. He's been able to socially transition, and he's been very excited over the past year to begin the process to work with medical professionals in order to make important life-saving decisions about his body and his future. He also had hopes of joining the military. Within a week of Donald Trump taking office, all of his future plans were shattered. We also have Lurie Children's Hospital, who has long been one of the leading medical supports for LGBTQ plus care in Chicago, that are now pulling back their supports. We need this contract because by not having the protection of this contract, we are putting all of our LGBTQ plus kids' lives at risk. What does this contract do for our students and our communities? Well, it includes language that explicitly calls for the protection of our most marginalized students. And that includes requiring the use of affirmed names and pronouns for students and staff, as well as access to safe and affirming bathrooms. Our proposals will ensure that all transgender and gender nonconforming youth dependents will have access to full access to life-saving medical care, school-wide protections, network-level leaders, and sanctuary protections that trans youth and adults so deeply deserve. This contract will protect both students and staff from the violent war that Trump is waging within our communities. We have to settle this contract. Every day we wait increases the likelihood that our kids suffer at the hands of the Trump administration. We need Pedro Martinez to stop stalling and provide Chicago's queer community this force field of protection. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. I know we're all really concerned about this administration. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth just said Black History Month celebrations are not welcome in the military, so we can only imagine what this new education secretary will try to do. Next, I would like to bring up Gabriel Paez. Gabe is a CPS bilingual middle school teacher and chair of the CTU Bilingual Education Committee. Okay.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. Yes, like Jackson mentioned, I teach on the west side of Chicago. I've been here since 2013. And my school is also a sustainable community school that's received hundreds of newcomers. I'd also add that I'm a proud member of my school's sanctuary team, something that we're enabling our members across the city to build in their buildings. Linda McMahon really is an insult to educators all across the country. It's just another example of how our profession is constantly being debased and disrespected. The last thing that us public school teachers need is another person with no educational background, never been a teacher, doesn't even hold a teaching license, telling us what to do. She couldn't be hired to do what I do for a single day. Yet she's now charged with leading this country's school and leading this country's future. The real DEI crisis in the United States seems to be unqualified Project 2025 right-wing extremists being handed our public institutions to bury the public good in private greed. And let there be no mistake as to what this means. The Trump-Musk administration means to dismantle the Department of Education, to withhold $20 billion per year of Title I funds to low-income schools like mine. And the perfect person to drive the agency into the ground is Linda McMahon. What we're going to see and what they've already promised is a massive transfer of wealth from public investment in our schools to for-profit voucher systems like we've seen in Arizona, designed to defund and break education. Their vision is the complete elimination of public education through 1,000 cuts. This is why now we need to link arms in our resistance and teach liberation through solidarity with millions of other educators in this country who feel the same way. This is also why we need a strong contract now that acts as a force field against a growingly authoritarian far-right government with educators and our students in its crosshairs. Specifically in what I do working with newly arrived students to the country, our community is at great risk. We should anticipate Linda McMahon to use our schools to enforce immigration policy, to pressure districts to give information, to collaborate with ICE. They do not see education as a human right for all kids, regardless of their status, per the Supreme Court Plyler versus Doe in 1982. We already see states like Tennessee moving to require proof of immigration status to register children in their buildings. Even here in Illinois, in Chicago, the Secret Service went to a school in the middle of a school day in a largely immigrant neighborhood to look for an 11-year-old child. We know that this was an intentional act of intimidation against the community, and this is the kind of psychological warfare we should expect from the Trump administration. But what's remarkable about is that situation is how our members were able to leverage our 2019 contract to turn away U.S. federal agents because of the sanctuary protections we fought for and that we won. We also won financial support to our DACA and Dreamer CTU members who are now in limbo with this barrage of anti-immigrant hatred we see coming from the White House. We're fighting for a historic contract now to create truly sanctuary schools in which all of our kids get to come to school without fear, to see their cultures, language, and histories uplifted and taught accurately. And what I want to leave us with on this is that immigrant students have always been and will always be part of CPS. We need a contract now to surround these kids with the protection of sanctuary so that no one has to fear getting an education just because of where they happen to be born. I'm asking the people of Chicago to stand with us, to demand that contract now, and for Pedro to give us the contract that our kids and our teachers deserve. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabe. Yep, we need that force field. And to speak more on this and other matters, I'd like to bring up Quinn Washington, who's a Chicago Teachers Union Executive Board member, Southeast Side Elementary School teacher. Good morning, Quinn. You with us?
Good morning. Yes, I'm with you. Technology is doing what technology does this morning. Listen, I am here this morning. I'm actually kind of angry. No, I'm not kind of angry. I'm very angry. I'm angry that we are sitting here in the middle of Black History Month having to have this conversation about Black history and the importance of Black history. I'm angry because there is a segment of our country that feels like teaching Black history or the nation's history in its totality is an affront to society. It is an affront to people's feelings. And what about the feelings of all the young immigrant children? What about the feelings of all of the young African American people? What about the feelings of a nation that is being reeled by one bad decision after another? People are fighting this woke agenda, but people are fighting the woke agenda, yeah, while the nation is on fire. There are people sitting here asleep while the nation is literally on fire. We have a person in the White House that wasn't elected to be there that is going everything that he can to attack everything that we do. We have a CEO of schools here in Chicago that is doing everything but working with us to get a contract that solidifies the very important things that we need for our students to protect their history, to protect their status, to protect their education. And we as a union are standing. We're standing strong to do those things. We're standing to try our very best to give our students the schools that they deserve, to give our families a safe place and safe communities. But what is it going to take for us to really come together and recognize that there is something going on that is insidious? There's a plan that is trying to destroy public education, to privatize public goods, and use our tax dollars to do it. I can't stand for it. I won't stand for it. My people will not be erased in a country that was built on our backs. And then for them to have the unmitigated gall to try to erase us, it will not happen. We will not sanitize the story of this country. We will not sanitize how Native Americans were driven off of their lands, how Black people were put into bondage and forced to work these lands to build this great nation that we now have. We will protect our history. We will protect one another. We will protect our education. That is what this contract fight is about to me. It is about making sure that my students that have undocumented relatives can be safe and knowing that their people will be okay, and not stoking fear, which is what this Trump administration is trying to do. It's not okay. And I'm wondering where are the people at that are going to stand with us and fight with us and for us, because our children are our future, and our children's futures are at stake right now. The stake of the safety of all of us seems to be at stake, especially when it comes to our education and our educational freedoms, and making sure that we're teaching all of our history and all of what makes us truly a great nation.
Thank you, Quentin. And I think now we're open for questions. Is that right, Abby?
That is right. To our members from the press who joined us this morning, if you have any questions, please drop them quickly in the chat. And again, we appreciate everyone who's joined us on our social media channels, watching this live. And great thanks to all of our amazing speakers this morning. Okay. Vice President Potter, I'm not seeing any questions, so we'll pass it back to you to just close us out.
Great. Well, thanks again, everyone, for getting on this program this morning. We are going to stand with all of the public school advocates, stakeholders across the country today, asking Congress to make sure tough questions and scrutiny are applied to unqualified candidates when they attempt to run big systems that our most vulnerable children depend on, whether it's Title I anti-poverty funds, whether it's Title III McKinney-Vento funds for unhoused students, for English language learners, or Title IX that protects and defends young women, LGBTQIA students. We're going to need those protections now more than ever and fight for them. Regardless of what Trump tries to do, we must stand united. So thank you for this morning. We need a contract that can also reflect those values, and we're fighting on both fronts. Thanks again. Take care, everyone.